Hello, and welcome back to another audiobook chapter of Keen to Select Writing. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you do stick around. We got a great chapter. The war is kicking off. So stay tuned, like and subscribe if you're enjoying it. Let me know in the comments anything you like. I'll do my best to read and respond. With that being said, let's dive right into it. With Chapter 5, A Conqueror Named Raiz. Most days, Alukai attended training sessions. He would occasionally suggest ideas for fighting each of the major energies, although a fair amount of his ideas were out of reach at everyone's current level. He mainly stuck to instructing Reilly on how to use his new gifts. While Alukai did not know the specifics of Reilly's ancient natural energy, he was teaching him to access the powers and release it outward, as they did for the children of the Leger when they come into their own powers. It was slow going, as it took Reilly a week to be able to move while circling the energy through him. It took him 2 more weeks to master a basic discharge of power from his body. He had started to complete his first attack by shooting the lightning-like energy from his fist in a straight line. One day, Alukai remarked that Reilly was coming along nicely, though he was no prodigy. The other energy Reilly appeared to be able to harness was physical energy. His strength and speed were increasing faster than any other member of the group, and he found himself healing faster after each training session to the next. Reilly's increase in his physical abilities was most noticeable during combat training. After a month, no one, including Jameer, who had found himself leagues ahead of the others, and had started with great strength and reflexes, could win a one-on-one sparring match against him. That is, until Alona decided to be his partner. "Today you will fight me," she said, on the 5th day of Reilly effortlessly winning. "Whoa, Alona's stepping in for the first time?" Jameer announced to all. "I'm a little nervous about this, but fair warning, I'm feeling really good today," Reilly said with a sly smile. "You need to learn that power alone won't win you many fights," she calmly retorted as she readied herself. "Both fighters ready?" Alex asked. Yes. "Begin." Alona moved quick, rushing Reilly. She sent a kick straight to his face, his reflexes bringing his arms up to guard. With a smooth grace, she bent her knee, lowered her aim, and sent her foot shooting right into Reilly's stomach before he could respond. Reilly doubled over as the air was drained from his lungs. He tried to move back and gain some distance, however Alona had other plans. She stepped forward and pivoted into a swinging kick that landed straight into his ribs. As he fell to one knee, he knew he had to push her back. She moved on him quickly. Without thinking, Reilly let the energy flow from him, the purple light crackling as it raced along his skin. Much to everyone's surprise, she moved as if prepared for an attack she had never faced before, and spun to dodge. She was quick, but as she spun, a stray jolt of purple lightning grazed her arm, forcing her to let out a scream. This did not break her movement, though. While spinning, she raised one leg, and as she came out of her spin, brought her heel to Reilly's head, sending him flat to the canvas. With no air in his lungs and vision being spotted stars, he wasn't rising to his feet anytime soon. Alona knew she was victorious and called the match, holding her arm that was struck. She felt a deep pain that both made her arms slightly numb and her spirit lowered. The eerie feeling reminded her of those she had lost in her life, a deep unpleasantness. Before ending their training for the rest of the day, she noted Reilly's natural energy may be more than just a means of attack, and that for her sake and his, she would need to work with him more closely during his combat training. Outside of classes and boot camp, everyone was allotted free time in the evenings. Reilly spent time eating and recovering from his days, or talking and exploring with Rachel and Jameer. The two who made the most use of their time were Alex and Quinn. Alex spent a lot of his time discussing logistics with Alona and getting approved to sit in on battlefield strategy lessons. Quinn would go and catch up with his old unit, or by helping in the vehicle depot. As the group learned one night at dinner, he grew up a NASCAR fan and even did some amateur circuits when it was his goal to go pro. An unfortunate crash would put him on the path to where he is now. He admitted sometimes he missed it, but he loved being able to serve. One night, after a particularly difficult training session, in which Reilly continued to struggle in intentionally producing his violent energy to attack, he crashed hard into his pillow. Reilly opened his eyes and found himself in the training room, but something felt off. The lights were brighter than usual, reflecting off the walls and almost blinding him. The gray matted floor, typically used for combat training, was now black. As his vision adjusted, the black mass beneath him seemed to be moving. He could feel a weight beneath his feet, holding them in place. Suddenly, Reilly realized he didn't know how he had gotten there. Searching for the door, he noticed that there wasn't one. "How did I get here? This isn't right," he muttered. Then it clicked. He was dreaming. But how? "I can feel something gripping my feet," he thought, just before slam. "Ah!" Reilly cried out, but no sound came from his mouth. He tried to speak again, but still nothing. Wait, did hitting the floor make any noise? He wondered. The inky black floor clung to him as he struggled to regain footing. What hit me? He finally thought. Adrenaline surged through him, allowing him to see through the blinding light. The floor was indeed moving. As it sensed that Reilly had noticed, the swirling black mass shifted right in front of his eyes. What Reilly saw next terrified him beyond any nightmare. A slender head emerged from the mass, followed by arms on either side, pushing up from the floor like someone climbing out of a pool. The figure continued to rise until it stood across the room from Reilly. It had no features or eyes. Its body swirled like the floor, and ink dripped from it, returning to the nothingness below. Even though Reilly knew it was a dream, he was too scared to feel any pity for the creature until its arms reached out for him. It moved fast, covering the distance between them without its body moving. Reilly was quick, but not quick enough. The arms grazed his shoulder. The force from even a slight touch was tremendous, shocking Reilly and knocking him to the floor again. He was getting annoyed with the liquid clinging to him every time he fell. Worried about another attack, he knew he couldn't waste time getting up. Activating the energy within him, he sprung to his feet. Before the creature could retract its arms. It appeared as if the weight had affected it. The outstretched parts of its arms broke off, disappearing into the black puddle below. Its arms slowly regenerated from its own body. For a brief moment, Reilly realized he could win this fight. Whatever this thing was, it was fragile. But as if responding to Reilly's use of his powers, the monster launched a new, aggressive attack. It slid across the floor in large, sweeping motions, both arms reaching out like garden hoses, trying to hit and constrict him. Reilly's speed and agility were just enough, though the chaotic movements made for some close calls. Whether he dodged or knocked an arm away, it fell into the pool below before regrowing as the attacks continued. He had never kept his power active for this long before, and he knew he would be worn down first. In a moment of panic at this realization, Reilly unleashed his energy. Purple light flickered and crackled between his fingers as he slapped away an approaching arm aimed at his head. This time, the arm didn't break off and melt. Instead, the energy from Reilly coursed through it like lightning in a cloud before the arm turned to embers and burned away. Reilly felt a surge of energy, and a smile spread across his face. I'm winning this, he thought. The only problem is, I'm running low on power. I guess it's time to get up close, he decided as he rushed forward. Mistake, he muttered to himself. He remembered the boa constrictor his family owned when he was younger. The creature's arms coiled around him. Reilly tried to summon the violet light to his hands, but could only manage a flicker. The arms squeezed before pulling him down. Reilly clawed and yanked at the floor, desperate to stay above the darkness. With half his body submerged, he thought it was over. In a final act of defiance, he balled his fist, screaming silent rage as he slammed it down. Just as his fist touched the dark water, he was graced by the purple sparks, and he felt free once more. So I can't trust close range. Back to plan A. It was always my favorite, he joked to himself. He curled his fingers tightly once more, staring down the demon in his dream that felt all too real. He imagined the feeling from when he slammed his hand. It was do or die time for both of them. The creature shot its inky black arms in a curve to the walls before turning in towards Reilly, leaving no room for him to escape. That was fine by Reilly, as it gave him a straight shot. He cocked his arm to throw a punch. The energy Reilly launched from his fist zigged and zagged as it raced across the room. An archer would have called it a bullseye as it struck the nightmare monster square in the chest. Once more, the purple lights radiated throughout before the demon vanished. Before Reilly could gather his thoughts, he awoke, drenched in sweat, sitting up in bed. The boys' dorm was dark, with only the sound of Alex's snoring. Something smelled bad, but that was nothing new in this room. Reilly was more than a bit shaken by his dream, and decided to go for a walk. He would be sure to steer clear of the training room. Reilly was wandering around the hallways of their underground base, and as he turned down one of the halls he didn't remember traversing before, he saw a door cracked open, and what looked like a dim light inside. As he got closer, an aroma hit his nose. It was an herbal smell, like someone inside was drinking tea. He knocked on the door, and from inside he heard a response for him to come in. He pushed open the door and found Alukai sitting in a chair reading what appeared to be a very old book, in a language Reilly didn't recognize. On the table next to him was a lamp that dimly lit the room, and a small cup that looked battered and old. Inside it was what Reilly guessed was filling the room with the aroma. Though the room was barely lit, Reilly noticed a cot in the corner and assumed this was Alukai's room. "What might I do for you, young Mr. Locke?" asked Alukai. "I didn't mean to barge in. I was just exploring the halls." "It's all right. I've grown to enjoy my time with you all these weeks. I don't mind sharing some of my personal time with you." "Must not seem long, considering you say you've been alive for a few thousand years now." Alukai let out a soft smile, and he looked into his cup with knowing eyes. "After all these years, my time is measured in how much joy I find in it. And let me say, time with you all has turned weeks into years, my boy," he said with sincerity. "So what can I help you with while you're here?" he asked. "Can I ask you some things?" Reilly sheepishly inquired. "Anything you like," said the old man. "I suppose one question I have is that you turned your back on your people. How do you handle it?" "I haven't been a part of my people for a long time, and that's a long time even for me. How I deal with this place in my life, since you would like to know, is that I take a moment to read a little and have a cup of tea. A simple trick I was taught by a woman I knew a long time ago." "Tell me about it," said Reilly, with genuine interest. "I was young once, you know." Alukai started with a chuckle. "I was a man who found himself unable to stay in one place, and enjoyed enacting change in the places I went. I traveled around the world. When I found those in need, I worked with them to enact the change needed in their lives. Yet every time my job was done, I moved on, never knowing peace or a home of my own. I continued this for a few centuries until one day I made my way into a large city. When I found what I was to do there, I met a woman who also believed in changing this world and people's lives in it for the better. She was one of my people and had the power and strength to do more than I ever could. For a time I worked with her. We achieved miracles, miraculous wonders together. I lost myself with her, and before long years had passed, I knew I had to leave once more when my work was complete. Alas, leaving her was one of the hardest decisions of my life. Again, I traveled this world more restless in my stops than ever before. After a century, I stumbled into Rome and met her once again. Her work had brought her to the city, and she had grand ambition for it. This was in the early days of Rome, and she believed it may one day be the final civilization humanity would need. We worked and lived together in it. It was during this time she taught me this trick to calm my spirit. This time when our work was done, I decided not to leave her. From then on we were a pair, moving about the world as we saw fit. So you loved her? Reilly pressed. I did. But she is long gone now, I'm afraid, Alukai confessed as his eyes became momentarily lost in a world he once knew. There are a few questions I've had since you first explained why I'm here and unlocked my powers. Yes? Came Alukai. Almost as if a flood Reilly had been holding behind a dam, he exploded with his questions. Why was I given these powers? What am I now? When will I need to be ready? I'm afraid I do not know why you were blessed with these abilities. The answer you seek lies with those beyond me, beyond any of us, really, came Alukai's response with honesty in his voice. As for your second question, does it matter what you are now? Alukai said. To me it does. Who I am now will impact what I become. Please help me understand, Alukai. If it's what you wish, I will explain the best I can. He took a brief pause before continuing, as if to collect his thoughts. You exist in the realm between two worlds. As you are alone in that regard, you are the void between our two kinds. Born a human, yet given the strengths of the Leger. You exist in neither world, but can be a part of both. That is who you are now. I hope that answer helps you, Mr. Locks. Reilly sat with his eyes fixed on the small table before him, though not seeing it at all. Consumed by his thoughts. It wasn't the answer he was expecting, yet it put his mind at ease. He now had a place to begin, a place to start his new journey, even if that place was an empty void between his old life and the new. Actually, it does, he finally replied. So how long do we have? You and your friends have ample time. For the battles to come are not on the given horizon yet, my boy. With that, I must say it is rather late. Best be off to your quarters so we may both get some rest. With that, Reilly departed from Alukai's tiny room and returned to his room with the rest of the guys. Tomorrow would be here before he knew it. And what it would bring, no one was ready for. The morning appeared to be the usual. The gang attended Alukai's lecture with the topic on the Leger Council of Leaders. It was the closest to a government they had, and was made up of representatives from each energy in different regions of the world to represent their people before the true leader of the Leger. Not being his most interesting subject, lecture, the group struggled to stay attentive. Suddenly the briefing room began to shake. It occasionally rumbled over the last 2 months when a procession of cars drove overhead, but this felt more like an earthquake. Ilona and Reilly were the first to rise and started heading for the door with the rest following. Theo looked back to check on Alukai, and much to his surprise, for the first time, saw real fear on his face. He stopped moving with everyone else and went to Alukai. When he made his way to him, he asked, Alukai, are you alright? The response he heard chilled him. It's too early. She shouldn't be here. The rest had made their way to the stairs and pushed through the door. The shaking had stopped, and the office that kept their entrance a secret looked intact. However, when they stepped outside, shock took hold of their faces. For the first half of the building laid in ruin, and through the now open walls they could see the surrounding parts of the base destroyed with the fallen bodies of soldiers they had come to recognize and know, now scattered about. Standing atop the mess hall, peering over the strip of the base, where Reilly and the rest stood, were 5 figures, with the midday sun shining bright on them. The broken yet quiet surroundings, along with the stories of supernatural beings the group had been hearing, these individuals loomed before them with intimidation. As Theo and Alukai emerged from underground, the elder man sat his eyes on the intruders, and they him. His next words sent shivers down the spines of all. I'm sorry, my young students. It appears she decided it will begin now. This changes things. You said we would have more time, Alona said, and for the first time the others heard what might be concern in her voice. I did, and I was wrong, Alukai admitted with resignation in his voice. Who are those people? Reilly asked, never breaking his gaze on those before him. Standing in the back were 2 hooded figures, and a young man appearing to be in his late teens. He certainly had an interesting look, with mousy brown hair that was combed on one side and messy on the other. He had a tan face with hazel eyes and an interesting tattoo that ran down the right side of his face that overlapped the corner of his eye. The tattoo was light blue in color and looked like underturned semicolons that were almost connecting. Otherwise, he was dressed quite normally, with a brown leather jacket and jeans. In front of him stood a large man dressed in armor that covered only his shoulders, forearms, and core, and lower legs. At his waist hung 2 swords on either side. The man had clean-cut hair and dark eyes with a face that looked as if a smile had not crossed it in years. To his side, and slightly in front of them all, stood a woman. Her age was hard to pinpoint, looking both youthful and mature at the same time. The only blemish on her face was a scar starting at her jaw and running up her left cheek. Her eyes were shocking, as they were purely black with shining star-like dots deep inside them. Her face was framed with strands of her blonde hair and met her bangs at the top. The rest of her long hair was pulled into a ponytail behind her. She stood in a shirt that had one sleeve missing, exposing her right arm, and the other sleeve left long. She wore a functional-looking skirt over leggings. It all seemed like odd choices of clothes for the cold time of year and battle they had begun. But then again, these were odd people, and what Reilly and the rest knew. What is with what they're wearing? Came from Rachel. The Legere do not view armor the same as humans do. Whereas you need it to survive in battle, our abilities allow us to do without it. Over time began to be seen as weakness, Alukai explained, as he stood unmoving and unblinking at his foes. Mr. Locks, standing before you, the man with 2 swords goes by Crimson Blade Titan. He is the Legere's acting general, and one of our strongest members. Behind him is his guard, a most gifted youngster named Augustine. The 2 cloaked individuals are Her Majesty's guard. So that means, Alex started to pose the question, already knowing the answer. Yes, Mr. Randall. The woman at their front is Raiz, the leader of the Legere people. She stands above all, her power unequaled. Good then. That's who I have to beat, Reilly said with a smile. My boy, you are not nearly ready to face such a being. Alukai tried to counter him. No, Reilly. We need to withdraw and reorganize, Alona said. Relax, I got this, he said back to them both as he ran off before they could reply to stop him. He sparked his fist to have its purple glow as he ran. Standing on top of the mess hall, the Leger watched Reilly move on them, until Raiz spoke. That is the young man who's been gifted. He looks quite interesting, she said in a silky and kind voice. I will kill him now, Titan said with a rough tone as he stepped forward and grabbed the hilt of his sword, only to be stopped by Raiz's hand being held up before him. No. The sparks of his power are what drew us here. I would like to handle this, she said. With that, she raised her right hand, and in a slapping motion, crossed it in front of her body. As she did so while he ran, Reilly's body began to crumple from his left side, and he was thrown to the side as if a bus had hit him. Oh shit! He did not have that, Jameer yelled. All his friends had seen was the woman wave and some invisible force blast Reilly away. Shock and fear permeated their faces. That is just one of her frightening abilities, Alukai whispered. She is unique in her ability to use two energies, both physical and mystic. She can physically attack you from any distance, and you will never see it coming. You said one of? Rachel asked. Her eyes allow her to glimpse the future. Oh, Rachel responded without her usual vibrant tone. Reilly summoned the flow from inside him and found the strength to stand once more. As he did, Raiz cocked her head to the side and punched the air in front of her. As if he took a shot straight to the jaw, Reilly's head twisted to the right, and he was again sent flying back a few feet, landing flat on his back. Raiz moved in a jump and landed over his unconscious body in a flash. She raised her hand ready to place the final blow. Stop! Alukai's voice boomed across the strip of road between the two opposing sides. Alona and the rest had never heard him speak in such a way. It tensed their muscles and sent shivers down their spines. The curious thing was, Raiz appeared frozen in her stance, and though those behind her seemed poised to strike, they stayed motionless. Miss Petrus and Mr. Cordell, come with me and retrieve Mr. Locks. Mr. Emery, it is time for you to go find Mr. Quinn and have him retrieve a vehicle for your escape, Alukai said with determination. He proceeded to walk out, standing face to face with Raiz. Alona and Jameer ran out as well, picking up Reilly's body and moving him back to where Rachel and Alex had stayed. You use your power against me? Raiz asked, still calm. I wish I did not have to, but I cannot allow you to kill this boy, Alukai responded. You can't hold me back forever. You won't escape. I do not plan to. They will, though. You and those behind you will stay for the time being. He then turned his head back towards his students. Miss Petrus, I leave them in your capable hands. The future is yours to write, he said, leaving them with a smile as Quinn and Theo pulled up in an SUV, and the group piled in. With one last glance at the man they owed their lives to, they peeled away and made their escape. That's the end of Chapter 5, The Conqueror Named Raiz. Hope you guys enjoyed it. The war is getting started in Record of the End, Reilly the Void. If you did enjoy it, like and subscribe, and leave a comment if you like. And I'll see you next time for Chapter 6. Bye!